Ringba, they be the king high. Now, what you won't do? Wanna be ballers, big shot paper callers.
Welcome to the Paper Caller Show. My name is Adam Young, the founder of Ringba, and today we have special guest Alex Elperin, the CEO and co-founder of Avenge Digital. They're a rapidly growing company that is specifically focused on lead generation and pay-per call. In fact, they're hiring more business development professionals with insurance experience now. Alex has more than 10 years of experience in the lead generation and pay-per call space, and they're located in Seattle, Washington. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
So let's rewind for a moment, and I'd like to hear about how you got started in the performance marketing industry.
Sure. So it all kind of started with a sales job I had at a company called House Values, which I believe at this point they were sold maybe 3 or 4 times to, I believe, Trulia now. I started there as a sales rep and didn't know anything about the lead gen industry, and kind of fell in love with it immediately. I think the thing that I fell in love with was just kind of the intangible, you know, selling the dream and an opportunity for someone to, back then, to be able to connect to a consumer that's selling their house or buying a house, right? I thought that was really cool, and especially early on in my career, I thought this was kind of the new thing, and it was just incredible. So worked there for a couple of years. After leaving from there, kind of worked a couple of different jobs. And then I believe in 2007, I started at a company called Quote Wizard. Was one of the first folks there and held many different roles, but started out doing agent sales, was kind of building up that department, and like I said, held kind of a few different jobs and worked there for about 8 years. And towards the end of my tenure there, I started noticing this new thing, kind of like a lead 2.0. And people started talking about it. I've been hearing about calls or warm transfers for quite some time, but it was click to call. So I was curious, what is click to call? What does this actually mean? You can click right on your phone and get connected to a consumer. It was still fairly new, and was actually introduced to Justin Ellenberg, which I think a lot of people in the space got started with Justin Ellenberg and his shows that he has on YouTube. So I owe a lot to that guy. Fell in love with the industry and just kind of saw that, you know, a lot of people, hey, they have their cell phones, and this is kind of becoming a thing, and it's here to stick around. It's not going anywhere. So at that time, I actually had a, you know, I worked with Justin a little bit and tried to kind of figure out, you know, which way to go and how to build this up. So he gave me a lot of instruction there. And at that point, I actually had a buddy kind of more or less in the industry. He was in an insurance space, and we were talking for quite some time. He said, hey, I think I have a little bit of experience, you know, in the insurance space. I know kind of how to talk to these people. I have a little bit of experience in building some software. Let's see if we can make a go of it. So at that point, parted ways with Quote Wizard, and we started a company at that point, which is Ring Router, which some of you may know or not know. So we were doing well there, and then more or less had a little bit of falling out. So back in 2015, parted ways and started Avenge Digital with one of my closest friends, and we've kind of been doing it ever since. So that's kind of the long and short of it, but that's how we got started.
And I think that's the cool thing about the digital marketing space. A lot of people start as an account manager, an employee in the space, and then realize that there's really nothing holding them back from starting their own business, even if it's just a single affiliate, or maybe like you had a partner and you guys did it together. You know, I started in the space the same way as an individual affiliate almost 15 years ago, and then realized it's just almost like the digital gold rush, and it's not going anywhere. And there's a lot of opportunity for people to start their own businesses and build something of tangible value here. So on a side note, I noticed in your kid's drawing there, it looks like your actual logo. Did your kid draw the logo?
Yeah, she's really creative. So yeah, she kind of did a lot of stuff on here. She came up with some of our taglines, and she created like a whole cartoon sketch here, and it's pretty cool.
Very cool. Very cool. So what did the early days of your business look like? What did it feel like when it was just you and your partner starting out on your own?
It was very cold in the garage. Winters in Washington, we don't get a lot of snow, but we get a lot of rain. And when you're sitting for 8 hours in a garage that's not insulated, it gets very, very cold. So we have pictures of my business partner and I with full parkas, with big hats, and the gloves, you know, that you can kind of move the fingers off of. So we would, in between, kind of throw them on when we're not typing. But it was great, though. You know, we love kind of building something from the ground up. It was very exciting times, you know, when we got our first, you know, yes or two, we celebrated, and it's always exciting. And you know, we always knew kind of where we wanted to go. We didn't know how long it would take to get there. But yeah, we're really excited to kind of be where we are now, and I think we've grown a little faster than we anticipated. We are on our third office at this point, so which is a good thing. We've outgrown, you know, the first two, so that's exciting. But yeah, the early days, like I said, they were cold. They were we made a lot of mistakes. We learned from those mistakes. We're still making mistakes.
And I think that's what marketing is. It's just perpetual mistakes and learning from them, or any business really. Anyone who claims to have the whole thing down before they start is crazy. Like, that doesn't exist.
Yep.
So what were some of the most painful lessons that you learned early on in business?
Oh, man. Don't prepay someone for marketing. That was a big one. We had a guy that, it was interesting. You know, you get a bad feeling, but you still kind of push it because you want to get that traffic. And we had a guy that was showing us, he was like, yeah, you know, we're a legit marketing company, and we've been doing this for many years. And for some reason, he was showing me pictures of his office, how cool his office was. And I was like, that's cool, I don't really care. A lot of our affiliates that are really good work out of their garage, so we care less. But he was like, yeah, we're legit, all is good. Prepaid $5,000, and that was it.
Zero calls.
Zero calls.
Oh,
Zero anything. Yeah. So that was definitely a pain point, especially when you're first starting out and every dollar counts. Losing $5,000 off the top was tough. It was a tough pill to swallow for sure.
That's a serious risk that anyone coming into the affiliate space or pay-per-call space really has to deal with. And it's hard to get around. It's one of the reasons why we facilitate so many introductions between our clients and partners, because at least we know then that there's like at least a little bit of accountability and reputation and can try and prevent some of those things. But that's really tough when starting out. And I think a really important lesson that people need to understand, not prepaying, working with people through referral, and making sure that they have the right partners, because every little bit of capital is so critical when you're starting. That hit must have felt like a kick in the balls. Yeah,
100%. Yep. And I think what's been really helpful is to develop a network of folks that you really trust. You know, Anthony and Eric that you've had on the show, and you know, Justin. We all kind of talk between one another, and you know, if there's a pub that seems a little fishy, or you know, something just doesn't smell right, we trust one another to say, hey man, we're in the same, all good, but have you worked with this person? What are your thoughts on this person? And we move on from that point. Because there are a lot of, I don't know, what I call them, shady people in this industry. They do like to pre-charge and run, and they like to send bad calls and run, and you know, they just want to make a quick buck and get out. So that's definitely an important lesson.
So walk me through what the customer journey is like on an auto insurance phone call.
Sure. So we, you know, have some of our own traffic. We also work through publishers, and predominantly we purchase and generate click-to-call. So the way that it essentially would work is a consumer would go online on Google on their phone, right, and they would type in auto insurance. They would see a click-to-call ad. They would click on that ad and essentially go through our phone tree. right? On our phone tree, they would be triaged essentially, so they would answer a few questions, validating intent essentially. We also want to make sure that we get their zip code because area code is kind of a tough thing since most people are on their cell phone right now. So we get that information, and we also want to see if they are insured, what company are they currently insured with, because we don't want to send the person to the same carrier they're currently insured with, since the price is the same. Once they've typed in all that information, we essentially send them over to the carrier or the individual agent, and then the individual agent essentially takes it from there.
Why did you choose the insurance industry and the sub-segment of auto insurance specifically?
I think the biggest reason was because of my experience at the lead gen company I spoke to about earlier, and had a good amount of contacts there. So that was kind of an easy start for us. Also, it's an industry that's scalable. It's not going anywhere. It's an industry that's recession-proof. And I really like the model of being able to, have agents on one side and have corporate carriers as a backfill on the other. I think a lot of publishers, like auto insurance. So it kind of goes in many different directions, the insurance industry, but there's a lot of space there for new guys essentially to come in.
And those same reasons are very applicable to affiliates and publishers too. Recession-proof, large volume, government, licensed monopoly, not going anywhere, and that means they can build sustainable campaigns on it without spinning plates and redoing everything every couple weeks. And so you can build a real business as an affiliate or publisher just in the auto insurance space, right?
Exactly right. Yep, definitely.
So how do you manage your capacity and back end across all those buyers and micro buyers?
It's interesting. It's definitely something that we have to work through on a daily basis. We're lucky enough to have some really great folks that work here. We have folks that have worked at large media companies to people that have worked at networks. Some lead gen folks. So all of these people kind of coming together and sharing their experiences helps us build this company. As far as managing capacity, I think, we, as I mentioned before, the agent piece is huge because the more agents you have, the more capacity you have. At this point, we can't give them enough calls, right? So that's something that we're always looking for. When it comes to the corporate carriers that we work with, just managing capacity is just kind of a normal daily thing. So whether it's, caps that we have to put in place with folks or, budgets or whatever it may be, that's something that we kind of have to manage more or less on a daily basis. But I think where our network is possibly a little different than some of the other folks is we don't necessarily have a one-to-one relationship in our auto insurance vertical. The way that we work is when publishers send us calls, it could essentially go to one of many buyers that we have. And with the agents and the corporate carriers that we have on board, it can literally go to one of thousands of different folks. So when folks send to us on the auto insurance side, they don't really have to worry about, capping out or, hey, I'm going to run this for 2 days and then they're going to tell me to stop, which are some of the issues that we ran to in the past with some other networks that we used to work with when we started out. So I think that's definitely a big plus.
Well, and not only that, but working with all the independent buyers gives you guys a lot more options for direct feedback. You have a lot of different people that you're communicating with on a regular basis, and that means, you also are generating higher payouts because you have the smaller independent shops. And so there's a lot of benefits to working with you guys as opposed to just trying to find their own direct buyers. And I think that's something that's unique to the pay-per-call space. Normal affiliate network doesn't necessarily provide a ton of value except accelerated payments. But in the pay-per-call space, a network like yours is doing a ton of business development, managing hundreds or thousands of independent agents to create this national network that affiliates can drive calls into. And there's some extreme value there. It's not just brokering or taking a margin. You guys are providing the actual back end for your affiliates, which I think is a really big deal.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, and something to touch on, you were talking about, how we manage our quality. Definitely, with having agents on board, we get that feedback immediately. Whereas some of the larger carriers, they can take a couple of months to give you information. So as we get that feedback, we can talk directly to the pub and say, hey, they mentioned people are consistently looking for a specific carrier, or is there something we can do to change that up? Because ultimately what we want to do is develop a long-standing relationship, and with a lot of our publishers that we work with, that's exactly what we have, to make sure that everyone makes money. And ultimately, if your earnings per call is where you need to be, then a lot of times they don't need to jump ship, right? They don't need to go looking for other folks. So that's kind of our goal.
So when a new publisher gets into the auto insurance space, what are some of the lessons that you've learned that could help them avoid wasting money or making mistakes?
Yeah, I think the first thing is, when you're doing anything on Google, is right away you're probably going to lose money. We call it kind of the cook time, right? And I think anyone that's doing this knows that when you fire up an ad, you're going to lose money. There's no doubt about it. Unless you've been doing this for 20 years, you're definitely going to lose money. But once you give it a little bit of that cook time, things start turning around. So I think patience is something that a lot of newer affiliates possibly don't have. The ones that stick around are the ones that obviously have patience. And having some money behind you is definitely a plus, because there's only so many folks that can withstand, losing $5,000 during the course of a month or more. That's definitely some of the lessons, that we learned early on. And then, making sure that you are getting feedback on your traffic, on, whether it's working out for the folks that you're sending it to, because we had a guy that was driving great traffic to us initially, and all of a sudden we started getting a bunch of roadside assistance calls. And, we couldn't figure out what was going on. Ended up we started bidding on AAA. Most people know AAA by the roadside assistance. So, just kind of that back and forth feedback loop, I think is crucial to have with any network that you work with.
And you guys over there, if you're working with a publisher and they have questions about keywords or traffic sources, or if something's going to work or not work, or they want to try something new, I have no doubt that you guys are very open to providing expertise and guidance to your partners.
Exactly right. Yeah. So the two folks, that kind of manage that side of it, Tara and Stacy, they're very good at their job. They've been both doing it for quite some time. And, that feedback is definitely crucial and important, and they are more than happy to give that.
So what's your quality assurance process actually look like? And what's the hardest thing you have to deal with when it comes to QA?
I think quality assurance is definitely something that we're kind of sticklers on. So when new folks jump on, especially if they're inexperienced, and everyone says they're driving from Google, right? Every single publisher is driving from Google, but only a very small percentage of folks are actually driving from Google. So we'd like to see landing pages. We'd like to see examples. If possible, we'd like to see references. Also, when we start out, if we talk with some of the additional folks in the industry, as I mentioned earlier, that's really important. And then I think, just kind of when they first start out, keeping them kind of at a low cap, right? At least for the first little while, until you get a taste for what their calls are like. We also allow agents on our network to return calls if quality is bad, meaning like if they're paying, let's say, for someone that has no DUI, but somehow a person snuck through, they can return those calls. Well, sometimes those same agents will catch weird stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Calls that shouldn't necessarily go to those kind of lines. So they're the first ones to tell us those things as well. But yeah, I would say, listening to calls is a big thing, making sure the creatives are in line is big, and, constant communication with publishers is important.
And I think that a lot of affiliates aren't used to that. We see people transitioning from the normal CPA space into pay-per-call, and they're not used to having these really good direct relationships with their account managers and talking through all the details on these campaigns. But in my experience, it's imperative to do that, because your people are going to have really great expertise in these specific verticals, and they're willing to help publishers. And one of the biggest mistakes I see is that publishers go and they try and create a relationship with a network and then don't want to be transparent about what they're doing, which isn't going to work, and it's one of the biggest reasons that affiliates don't get replies from account managers or don't get access to networks like yours, simply because they don't want to tell people what they're doing. And that may fly in some verticals of affiliate, but it's just not going to work in pay-per-call. And so it's crazy, some of the stuff I see, but when I see a new affiliate that goes to a network and they tell them, this is what I want to do, this is my experience, here's where I've had success before, even if it's not in pay-per-call, and I really want to communicate and work with you guys, almost 100% of the time, all the pay-per-call networks will work with these people. But for some reason, and this is why I'm saying it, affiliates don't want to communicate. And that's something that has to change in our industry, and it has to change for new people that come into it, or they're not going to be successful.
Exactly. Yeah, I think having full transparency is super important, and you know, just kind of working through the flow, right, of what's working for you and what's not working for you. And our account managers, that's their job. That's what, you know, they live and breathe, that kind of stuff. So, you know, if there's something that you need to change, if it's something with the, you know, the IVR process, if it's, yeah, you know, you want to run different hours, anything like that, communication is crucial, you know, and because ultimately this stuff comes out. If you're doing something you shouldn't be doing, it will come out, you know, whether it's now or whether it's a couple of weeks down the line. But telling your account manager exactly what you're doing, I think, is incredibly important.
So how does Avenge Digital use technology, and what role does it play in your business?
So we actually built our own in-house technology. So it's based on Twilio. And all of our agents use our technology. The publishers, you know, they have access to our technology. The buyers have access to our technology. So depending on the needs of a specific client, we custom build that kind of stuff as well. So it's definitely, you know, something that helps us out on a daily basis. Also, to make sure, you know, that we're optimizing things the way we're supposed to be. And, you know, doing this for a couple of years, you kind of learn what are some of the things you need, what are some of the things that you don't need. And, you know, that's kind of one of the biggest reasons that we built our own technology. Initially, we were going to do Invoca, and while Invoca was great at one point, I think they have changed a little bit from what they used to do. And sorry if anyone using Invoca, I think they're awesome. But outside of that, you know, we needed some additional features they just didn't provide, and we probably didn't need 90% of the stuff that they did provide. So that's kind of why we built our own.
Makes complete sense. And what are some of the biggest opportunities that you see in pay-per-call right now at this very moment?
Oh man, I mean, auto insurance is still absolutely huge. I mean, right at this second, obviously, you know, with open enrollment, health is big. You know, I think a lot of people are coming to us and starting to talk about some additional ways to drive traffic. Text seems like that's coming up quite a bit. So I think that's a big opportunity there as well. I think ultimately it doesn't matter, you know, what vertical you're jumping into. Some have a high payout, some have a low payout. I think it's something that you need to be passionate about, and, you know, if it's something that you enjoy doing and something you want to do for the long term, because of the flexibility that being a pay-per-call marketer allows you, then that's something that, you know, you should probably get hooked up with a good network and start out with them.
And how do you think your business will change over the next few years?
Oh man, that's a tough question. You know, we have some lofty goals. I think we'll probably start adding in some additional stuff to our business, possibly, you know, the texting piece, maybe also jumping a little more into the leads and click side of the business, because we do have a good amount of agents on our network, and they are demanding some additional, whether it's calls or leads or whatever it may be. So I think as we, you know, get bigger, we're going to evolve possibly into some of those things as well.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. If people want to do business with Avenge Digital, how can they get a hold of you?
Just go to avengedigital.com. I think at the very top it says, "Are you a publisher?" Feel free to click that and fill out the short form, and we will be getting in contact with you.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate your time.
Thanks so much. Have a good one.
Yeah. about the Benjamins,
Thanks for watching the
baby.
Paper Collar Show. Let us know what you think by joining the conversation and commenting below. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe. And if you're on mobile, tap the bell. Whether you're new to Paper Call or an industry veteran, we invite you to join the free community at papercallers.com. This episode of Paper Callers is brought to you by Ringba Call Tracking and Analytics. See how Ringba is inventing the future of calls at ringba.com. See you next week.